Hi, this is my vlog 7 for the class. I watched Interview with a Vampire. This movie came out in 1994 and was directed by Neil Jackson. This movie starred a lot of the prominent Hollywood stars that we have now, such as Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, Kirsten Dunst, Christian Bale, and a lot of different other famous people now. This was produced through the Geffen Film Company, and it made $223.7 million in the box office. So yeah, that's a little intro for the movie. This movie follows the character Lewis, who is played by Brad Pitt. He shares his story of how he became a vampire and everything he went through to a San Francisco interview, who was played by Christian Bale. He was turned by Tom Cruise. His character's name is Lestat. When he was 24 and he was living and working as a plantation worker, or as a plantation master. They eventually left, and he and Lestat continued to terrorize and kill more people. Louis did not like the idea of being a vampire. He did not like having immortality, and it was something that he was struggling with all throughout the movie. Eventually, they kill Kristen Dunst's character. I believe her name was Claudia. They kill her mother and end up taking her in and making her into a vampire as well. I think she's probably 8 years old, so she's very young. And they dress her up as a doll and bring her around with them. Eventually, Claudia kills, or attempts to kill, Lestat, but he cannot be killed, and they move to Europe and meet up with a bigger group of vampires and try to learn more about their history. So out through this time, Louis is reflecting on his time as a vampire and talks about how he has, I believe one of the other vampires said that he had moral intentions, but he has the immortality and he does not want to live forever and doesn't really want to put on anyone else, but he has to do this to survive. At the end of it, the reporter is found by Lestat, and he ends up turning into a vampire, and that's just how the movie ends. So this movie has a lot of different themes that are seen all throughout it, one of them being good versus evil, as well as the idea of having desires. This movie is showing the evil through the vampires that are in this world and how they're taking over, and they're left with no choice other than to kill, as it's kill or be killed in their world. They have to take lives in order to survive. So yeah, that was one of the themes, and then another one is desires. A lot of the vampires, they have these big desires, sexual desires, hunger desires, and things like that are very prominent, and it also deals with the idea of death and dying, as the vampires are immortal, and Louis is struggling with that idea and does not want to be immortal, and he wished he could have not had to live forever and have to bear this weight and this guilt. This movie has a lot of queer subtext all throughout it. Vampires are inherently queer characters, as we've read, because vampires go after other people. In this movie, they're all of the same sex, for the most part, and there's a lot of queerness within that, and sharing blood and giving blood and eating someone in a very sexual way. So there's a lot of queer subtext within vampires, as well as the specific relationship between Lewis and Lestat. They have a lot of sexual undertones as they rely on each other and have fed and will feed off of each other, and they need each other to survive in this world. So yeah, there's a lot of sexuality that's seen throughout the movie, and there's a lot of underlying tension between the two main characters. So this relates to the class concepts because of the themes of sexuality seen in horror movies. Most horror movies have elements of sexuality that are attached to it, and it's often punished within these kinds of horror movies, as a lot of them have the idea of the final character, who is often seen as more pure. And it also has a lot of the intensity that the horror movies have, a lot like the music, sudden noises, and it just creates everything to be a lot more scary and a lot more intense, which is also why this is a horror movie and has a lot of the classic horror iconographies that we've talked about in class, such as them being vampires, the gothic images that are seen, death, immortality, all of that are very classic horror iconographies that have been seen. I really liked this movie. I thought it was very entertaining. One of my favorite things about it was the makeup and the body horror elements of this movie. I feel like that has a little bit been lacking, but this movie did a really good job, and I feel like it was kind of ahead of its time for how they did the makeup and how they transformed all the characters into looking like what I would imagine a vampire to feel like, and it looked really real for it being all makeup and all the special effects. So yeah, that was one of my favorite parts, was the makeup and the body horror element of it. So my thoughts on this movie, that was very well done, and it was a very fun watch. It wasn't that scary, but it was definitely very intense, and had that same intensity as other horror movies, and it definitely was a little bit creepy. And I liked how it had all the classic iconography that previous vampire movies and previous horror movies have had. And another thing that I enjoyed was it was very entertaining and did not feel like a 2-hour long movie. because sometimes the 2 hour long movies feel like 2 hours, but this was a very fun watch, and overall, I was a very, very big fan of this movie. So yeah, that was my vlog 7.